Boom, we're rolling, Mike. I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, brother. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Like I told you, man, it usually doesn't work out as good as it did this time. You're like, hey, I'm good to go tomorrow. I'm like, heck yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the planets just align like that. It's a cool thing when it happens that way,
Yeah.
effortlessly.
Yeah, I stumbled across your page. I like picking interesting posts online and then diving into the comment sections when I have some free time. And
Yeah,
I forget exactly what you said, but it was one of Ryan Mickler's posts.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I clicked your page. I'm always scoping people out for the pod, and I really liked the message that you were talking about. And yeah, you just seem like a solid guy. So I appreciate it again for coming on.
I appreciate it, man. I'll do my best to not disappoint you.
No, I'm never disappointed on here, man. If anybody's going to give me an hour of their time, I am pleased. So, I know this will be
Awesome.
great. These are my favorite podcasts too, when you just first meet somebody. And you said you have a show too, right?
Yeah, I've been doing a show for a few years called Mind of the Warrior. I just over the last year I've kind of migrated it over to my main focus is what I'm doing on YouTube. So I'm still releasing it on all podcast platforms, but I'm trying to really embrace the visual aspect of it moving forward.
That's the way to do it. I need to be better at YouTube. I mean, we do Zoom, obviously, for all the calls.
Hmm.
Like if they all looked as good as your background and your setup, I would love to put it on my YouTube. But half the time, man, people are like in a dungeon or, I'm not even in my studio right now. I'm out at like a co-op type place. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
really like that visual appeal. And if it's not like perfect, kind of how it is right now with yours, I'm like, nah,
Hmm.
screw it. But
Yeah, I had a good friend, Shane Crutchen is a good friend of mine. I had him on once and I told him we were going to video it, but I don't know what he was thinking. And he's sitting in his car with no shirt on the whole time. It was a really good episode and Shane's a great guest, but I was kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm glad you dressed up.
no doubt. Dude, you got a hell of a resume. Obviously, I just was on your in your bio, but um,
That's
Former Green Beret.
yeah, compensating for a lot of short man complex, man. So
How long?
spent a lot of time invested in compensation, you could say.
How long were you in for?
I did 32 years total.
Man, good for you.
Yeah. Still haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. So,
Yeah, well, welcome to the club. Me neither.
right.
Have you done a deep dive into this assassination attempt?
Um, I've done probably I would say like a mid-range dive. I'm waiting. My past experience with this is if I do the deep dive too early, the waters are so muddied, not to kind of to double up on the metaphor, but it ends up kind of confusing everything because and that's I got a lot of messages like in the literally in the first 24 hours after this happened saying, oh, I hope you're going to talk about this on the podcast and we can't wait to hear from you and what's your opinion. And I'm probably actually not even going to do an episode on it. The reason being Dan Bongino has talked about it. He's on his show. He's former Secret Service. Tim Kennedy, my good friend, has talked about it. He's done. He's been to a higher level sniper school than I have, and he's done more EP than I have. Although I've done my share of AP. I've been. I never went to a military sniper school. I actually went to a law enforcement sniper school in the late 90s. And I have been attached to both the presidential detail and the vice presidential. I was attached to Vice President Biden's detail when he was touring in Iraq. So I know a little bit about how this works and how to set it up, and I've done EP on various scales as well, both in my capacity as a medical director for a SWAT team and also as a kind of a private contractor. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in this, and we're learning more stuff all the time.
Yeah, by the minute, really.
Yeah, like literally, probably 5 minutes before firing up my computer, I was on my phone, and now I'm looking at video of the shooter an hour before the shooting, walking around the building, like looking up at the building and stuff. Uh, and it's so much is coming out of this. Mistakes were clearly made. Nobody can deny that. Um, I tend to I've always been of the opinion, a lot of course the conspiracy I knew the conspiracy theories were going to be rapid fire, right? And I knew that there was going to be basically two parts to these conspiracy theories, right? One was going to be, Trump and Trump allies staged this for sympathy, right? To rile up the base. And then the other conspiracy farm was going to be, oh, they're trying to take him out. Like, the actual, the deep state is trying to take him out. And I don't buy into either one of those. It's knowing what I know about human nature, knowing 32 years in the military, knowing what I know about the federal government. Um, Incompetence is always 10 times more likely than malfeasance. There is no it, let's say there was some deep space state we'll talk to that first. Some deep state conspiracy to take out Donald Trump. Nobody in the federal government is that good at keeping secrets. It just, I can almost everything that I ever had to sign on the dotted line and say, I won't talk about this. If I spend 10 minutes looking, I can actually find it on the internet. Like somebody else has talked about it. Almost every, I can only offhand think of like three major classified things in my career that have never gotten out of pocket. And I don't know if they ever will, but it's almost impossible. Think about the caliber of your average government worker. Is that somebody you think could actually keep a secret like this? Absolutely not, right? So to speak to the other conspiracy that that Trump's people staged this, it's we know we know from photographic evidence that these were not blanks, they weren't squibs, there were definitely bullets flying past President Trump's head. So you're telling me, and we also know from the video that he literally turned his head as that guy was taking the slack up out of the trigger. So you're telling me that they coordinated, somehow Trump had audio with the shooter saying, "I'm shooting now. Make sure you turn your head at precisely this moment, so I only nick your ear." I can honestly say
With iron
I
sights, from what I've heard.
yeah, with iron sights.
Right.
I literally I'm friends with very high level snipers. I'm talking about, guys with, that have shot other people through their eyeball. Um, Even at that close distance, if my, and I'll use Tim as an example because he's probably my closest friend that's a high level sniper. If Tim told me tomorrow, hey, let's go out to the range tomorrow and you're going to get 125 yards away and I'm going to shoot the pinna of your right ear as you turn your head, I'd say, yeah, you can go fuck yourself. Like there's no way that's happening. So I don't buy into the conspiracy theories on either side. I think a lot of mistakes were made. And if you need proof of incompetence, look at some of this Keystone Cop video of what we saw, and I can tell you this, it's been, I haven't worked directly with Secret Service since 2014, I think was the last time. So it's been 10 good solid years. Uh, this is not the Secret Service that I worked with. No,
Doesn't
not
look
in any
like
way,
it.
shape, or form. No,
And I don't know what it
no.
used to look like, brother, but it don't fucking look like it to me.
Yeah, it's what I'm used to is literally every T crossed, every I dotted, redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. We've planned for every single contingency. Um, uh, just to the point that everybody can just do their job. You don't even have to worry about the security threats. And I saw, even with my limited amount of knowledge, I saw a lot of mistakes made. But like I said, I'd like to see the dust settle first. Um, there's going to be an official investigation that's going to come out, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't get addressed. Some people are going to see that as cover up. I expect for there to be gaps in it. Part of that is going to be because there's a lot of tradecraft that cannot get discussed in an open congressional hearing. There are certain things that the Secret Service does on a day-to-day basis that they may or may not have failed to do that you will never see discussed openly. Because discussing openly, if they were to discuss that openly in a congressional forum, somewhere there's somebody just like this guy we just saw sitting there watching it, taking notes, and learning from his mistakes based on that congressional testimony. So I fully expect there to be gaps in the testimony. And people, afterwards, people are going to be saying, why, just like people still say about and I'm not directly comparing this to, say, the Epstein client list, because I want to know why we haven't seen that too. But there's going to be a lot of drum beating after the investigation. Why do we still not know about this? Why do we still not know the name of this agent? Why do we still not have a good answer for this? And I'm fully expecting that as well.
Yeah, me too. And
Yeah.
when this happened, man, I called my dad right away. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm taking the dog for a walk." I'm like, "Dude, they tried to kill your boy Trump just now." He's like, "What?" I was like, "You need to head back home and check it out." And as sorry as this is to say, I'm surprised it took him this long for somebody to try.
Yeah, I kind of am too, to
I
to
mean,
be honest with you.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that it happened. I'm more surprised that like it took this fucking long. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been
That
years and years and years, and like they haven't hated him any less over the
yeah.
years,
Yeah.
you know?
And we know this. I mean, if you look at protests, if you look at people that get interviewed during protests, you look at people that have been, people that have been interviewed, protesting at Trump events, everything from BLM to Antifa and everything else. It's completely obvious, and this isn't unique to that side of the political spectrum, but there's a tremendous amount of mental illness out there and a tremendous amount of gullibility. So I'm with you. I can't knowing how many gullible, mentally ill people are out there, and the level of rhetoric that has been ramped up for so long. Yeah, I'm pretty shocked. I'm not at all shocked at the number of people that have made their feelings known on social media and saying, I'm sorry that he missed, because I've known forever that there are, a high number of people. I've got some in my own family who, daily, I don't come from a religious family. I don't come from a Catholic family, even though I'm a Catholic myself, but they're figuratively, if not literally, lighting a candle and praying for his death every single day. There's tons of people out there doing that. So yeah, the fact that it just now happened is kind of surprising.
Yeah. And Mike, you might not have the answer to this, but I think a lot of people are asking, how does somebody that is, what, 20 years old
Hmm.
with no expertise in basically anything in life, no
Hmm.
military training, no specialized training? I thought I saw he was on the school rifle team. Who knows if that's true or not?
Yeah.
Um, but that's neither here nor there. That was probably a fucking joke. How does
Hmm.
somebody like this get within 200 yards of probably, shoot, is there anybody else that like maybe Putin? I mean, I can't think
Hmm.
of anybody else that people would like to see dead more than Donald Trump. I really can't. I mean,
Yeah.
how does
Yeah.
somebody with no training get that close?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to, we talk about, um, so I'm going to give you a really weird similarity here. So this is something that we see in medicine. It's when I was in medical school and I was doing my psych rotation, I actually had an attending psychiatrist tell me this, and it was something I'd never heard before, and it surprised me. He said, here's something that's really strange. He said, you'll have people come in, like we will admit people to the inpatient psych ward because they are so incredibly depressed. Like they just can't even get out of bed. Like all they do is sit in bed. They don't eat. They just sit there and cry all day. That's how depressed they are. And they get brought to us oftentimes by a family member, and we admit them, and we start them on medication, and we start with both individual and group counseling sessions, and then when they're feeling better, we discharge them. We send them home. And he said, believe it or not, that following month is where they are the highest risk of committing suicide, because they were actually too depressed to even make a plan
To
before.
even follow through with it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're so, I don't care. They're completely apathetic. You see that, I think, with a lot, most of the people that have intense hatred for Donald Trump and spend a lot of time thinking about him and reading about his policies and deciding what they don't like. It's almost like in order to dislike him to that level, you have to be smart enough to know how stupid it would be to try to kill him. Right. So that's part of it. So I almost feel like this kid wasn't even smart enough to figure that out, or maybe just didn't care. Maybe, he knew. We know now that he had a garage door opener type transmission device next to him, and that he had remote detonation IEDs in his van. So, it's who knows what the details of his plan were. As of yet, we haven't seen any type of manifesto. We haven't seen any indication that he talked to anybody about it or kept a journal, wrote anything down. So it's anybody's guess. Um, it's and this also, I have to say this, and this is, it's partially cliche, but it's partially true. And I said this in the immediate aftermath as kind of a little bit of dark humor, but there's a strong element of truth to it. Nobody of the political alignment that would hate what Donald Trump stands for has the balls or the skills to go through with it, basically.
I'd agree
I
with
mean,
that.
if you look at your average, the average dude handing you a latte through your car window is what we're talking about. This guy, he literally looked like, the photographic image that everybody thinks of the typical Trump hating, can't, it looks like he's, 90 pounds soaking wet, no upper body strength. He's got the Scooby-Doo shaggy, bristles on his chin because he doesn't even have enough testosterone to grow facial hair. 20 years old, nothing in his life going for him, no training, and somehow he got lucky. The right combination of determination on his part, and just so happens to be he caught the right location with the right constellation of the buildings in the right places during a daylight event with an open field of fire, and a Secret Service detail that made all the right mistakes for it to happen. There's a saying, you hear this a lot from kind of the crystal gazers. They say, one person with a lot of determination can manifest anything, even in the face of thousands of people that are against it. And it's, just the right combination of things happen. If you look, and history is full of things like this. The assassination of Archduke Ferdinand was a botched assassination that ended up getting a second opportunity. You know, the Lee Harvey Oswald just happened to be getting escorted out to a vehicle to be taken to a higher level security facility when Jack Ruby just happened to be walking by with the money from the strip club that he owned and a revolver in his pocket at that precise moment. This is not even premeditated. History is full of things like this. It's just, it does happen. I don't necessarily believe in luck, but sometimes chance and sometimes the universe throws the dice in such a way that it looks like it's magical when it's not.
Clearly, there was a lot of mistakes made,
Yeah,
but there was ample time of notification that this guy was on this roof. And
100%.
I kind of see both sides of it too. Being like former LEO, you have your rules of engagement, so to speak.
Hmm.
In the back of your mind, man, it's always there. Like, if I fuck this up, we're dicked because they do not have your back and they're gonna throw you to the wolves. Do you think a lot of
Hmm.
that was played into this?
Uh, yeah, I don't. These are some of the questions that I have because you specifically mentioned rules of engagement, and that was the specific question that I had because I know when I went to the San Diego SWAT Sniper Academy, and it was 95 or 96. I'd have my diplomas around or somewhere. I'd have to look at it. And while typically during breaks from the range, during lunch, or we were just in the head shed rehydrating, we'd watch videos, and we would also get like real world debriefs from actual things that they'd done. And one of those things was, um, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was actually an incident where San Diego PD, San Diego SWAT snipers, were backup for the Secret Service during a presidential visit. I don't remember which president it was, but so much like what you saw in Pennsylvania, the Secret Service was basically responsible for this ring, and then San Diego PD was going to be responsible for this outer ring. So they had snipers in the outer ring. Well, and they had a sniper. The purpose of telling this story was actually, they were talking about one of their snipers actually had a negligent discharge, had a round chambered, was looking through scope, for whatever reason, flipped off safety and squeezed off a round. President's aircraft hadn't even touched down yet, so it wasn't like anybody was actually in danger, but that basically torpedoed them from ever working with the Secret Service again for a pretty long period of time. But one of the things I also got out of that was what they're in EP situations for them and for the Secret Service, what the sniper rules of engagement are. And the sniper rules of engagement, and this was in the 90s, maybe things have changed, were very loose rules of engagement. I.e., if I saw somebody on a roof with a rifle, and it was a roof, and you get a map designated of, if you see somebody on this roof dressed this way, that's one of our people, right? If you see somebody anywhere else, that's not one of our people. So you see a gun, and I don't, and I'm one thing I'm going to talk about, and this is a little bit of Secret Service tradecraft, but it's been published in books and it's been mentioned in films, so I'm not putting anything out there that people shouldn't already know or couldn't find out on their own. One of the ways that Secret Service agents identify people in that inner ring is by lapel pins, and they have what's called the pin of the day that they wear. So if I see you, and I've never worked, and you might be from a different field office, or you might be from local PD, and I don't recognize you, but I can clearly see that there's printing. I can clearly see you're carrying a firearm. But if you're carrying, or you have on your person, some type of agreed on bona fides that were discussed at the briefing that morning, could be a pin, could be a specific piece of headgear, or a specific piece of clothing, I know you're on my side, right? Because you have that. But anybody I see and they're printing, that guy's got a gun, he's not wearing the hat he's supposed to wear, the pin he's supposed to wear, or the watch or the belt he's supposed to wear, he's getting special attention. So to me, as soon as this guy is on the roof with a gun, that they know nobody's supposed to be on that roof. And they even said, with a bullshit excuse, it was a sloped roof, which I'm not buying, but they know nobody's supposed to be on that roof. Somebody's on that,
He's wearing a t-shirt at that, man. Like
a
clearly
t-shirt
he
and
ain't a
cargo
part of the
shorts.
squad. Yeah,
Yeah.
come on.
So he's on the roof. He's somewhere he's not supposed to be. Okay. So he's already passed one gate. Now, could he be some fanboy who's just up there trying to get a really good picture? Okay, I'm not gonna turn his head into a canoe just because he's there. But you combine that with he's there and he's got a gun. Now I should have the green light. So I'm not. There's a story floating around the internet that I do not buy that says that supposedly the actual Secret Service sniper you see in the photos said that the head of the Secret Service told him he wasn't clear to take the shot, which is bullshit for a number of reasons. The head of the Secret Service would never be patched into a local detail. Complete bullshit. Would never happen. Now, you would have a lead for that detail. Is it possible that he would be asking the lead for clearance to fire? Yes, that's entirely true. But I don't, it says, I think, this is Jonathan Willis. I don't buy any of that. I think it's a complete made up internet trope. I don't think it's true. And I guarantee that there's no way that the head of the Secret Service was in Minnesota at the time. There's no way she was micromanaging a security detail. That's just not the way things work. But I am curious, but again, I can't see what he could see from, it looks like when you try to reconstruct it from other angles, it looks pretty plain. Does that mean it was that plane from his angle? I don't know. Because what I heard is all he could see was his head and maybe the barrel of the gun or something like that. And he wasn't even sure it was the barrel of the gun until the shots started flying. So I'm unclear on that. I would like to see if they got anything on video from his angle. It would be great if we got to see that someday so we can fully understand this. But right now we just don't know what we don't know.
When this immediately happened, you're kind of like an hour to 2 hours of limbo. Of course, we all turn on the news. We know that that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But if you have any type of training or, in my opinion, any type of common sense,
Hmm.
you could tell that they smoked dude right away if you listen to the
Oh yeah.
audio.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can hear Secret Service comms. They're like, "Hey,
Hmm.
shoot her down, copy that,
Hmm.
move, ready, move." And they're
Hmm.
like, "We don't know where he's at. The shooter could still be out there. We don't know how many there are." It's like, listen to the audio.
Hmm.
Like you can hear the follow-up shot. Like they smoked dude
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah. There's it's normal procedure for anytime I've ever worked TP. You never assume that the first shooter is the primary shooter. In fact, that's always been one of my favorite drills. And years ago, I gave a presentation to the Tactical Emergency Casualty Care Committee, and it was basically on just that. That we are too. Once you get below the level of federal and you start getting on like state and local level, and this is true for law enforcement, and it's also true for a lot of primary people. A lot of people work in EP, executive protection, who shouldn't be.
Yep.
They're completely
Yep.
unqualified. And there's a lot of focus on primary threat and not a lot of focus on primary threat. If you get somebody with an IQ over 105, what you perceive as the primary threat was probably diversionary. They're trying to channel you somewhere else. So that's why one of the things that really surprised me in the video is the amount of time they remained on the dais uh, with the principal. And yeah, they've got him surrounded, but it's you get off the X.
Yep.
You don't even put on a tourniquet on the X. You don't there's no medical aid on the X. You get off the X. And if anybody wants a good example of this, go back and look at the Reagan shooting, and you'll see that a Secret Service agent literally tackles him and drives him into the back of that limo with so much speed and force, in fact, that as they were driving away, they asked President Reagan, they said, "Are you hit?" And he said, "No, but I think you broke my ribs," because he just happened to dive into him on the same side that the bullet
Hmm.
hit. Um, and that should have been, the president went down. It really, as soon as they had three agents on the dais, they should have been moving. And, I understand, let me get my shoes, give me a second to, we all appreciate the amount of courage that he showed in showing everybody that he was okay.
Right.
So I appreciate that from his point of view. What I don't appreciate is I remember watching that and thinking, why? Because here's something that you learn. You should learn your first day of executive protection training. The moment that there is a threat, that person is no longer your boss. They aren't in charge of shit anymore. You're in charge. They work for you now. And that continues until you're in a safe location. And then if they want to fire you for anything that happened during that, that's fine. And when you go into executive protection, you learn that that's part of the job, is that you could get fired for saving somebody's life because they didn't like the way that you did it. So I have a problem with that. Um, that's again, there's a laundry list of things that they're going to have to answer for, and a lot of people are piling on that. But a lot, like we've discussed this whole time, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
I got two more things with this and we'll move on. Can we discuss the females? There's all those videos going around, especially with
Yeah,
the old girl trying to holster her Glock and just fimble fucking around.
and hiding 2 feet behind the principal while bullets are potentially still flying.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't. So my take on that is it's a little bit convoluted. So what you see, and so I want to be accurate with this, but I don't want to sound like I'm just being a misogynistic asshole, even though I am one. Um, what you see in that footage, right, is you see, I believe it's three or four females in frame, three of which on one side of the vehicle. I think one goes around to the other side of the vehicle. Uh, one kind of running in circles, one messing with her sunglasses, and one can't seem to holster her weapon. A lot of people, they're critiquing the. So let's talk about, and that's the one you brought up, is the one holstering a weapon. So let's talk about her first. A lot of people are critiquing her because, oh, look, she can't even holster her weapon without looking at the holster. I don't give a shit about that. I've never given a shit about that. And
No,
that's,
me
and
neither.
yeah, and I'm a little bit in the minority on this, but uh, I have said this multiple times throughout my career, and people aren't going to like this, but there's no such thing as a tactical reholstering, because if the threat still exists, you are not reholstering. So I should be able to light up a cigar and pop a beer at the same time I'm reholstering. That's more important than me being able to find my holster without looking. Now, you may have to find your holster without looking if you have to use your hands for something. But again, let's say they were in a situation where she had to carry the president. You're not going to holster until somebody else has assumed that role of security for you. So now it's okay for me to pick up the president. Because if bullets are still flying, I'm picking them, I'm dragging with one hand and I'm shooting with the other. So I don't give a shit that she couldn't reholster without looking. What where my problem is why was she thinking about reholstering to begin with? She didn't need her hands. So there was no task that required her hands, either for crowd control, putting them on the principal, hoisting herself up into a vehicle, or anything else. So holstering shouldn't even have been a consideration. She should have recognized we're still in as a minimum, we're still in a warm zone. I hate that term, but we're still in a warm zone. So my gun is still out and I'm still facing out. I'm still providing security. You don't flip a switch. When you're doing EP and, you're there in your suit, your holstered weapon, it's your goal is never to look like, you have different layers of it, but in the layer in which she was operating, you're never trying to have the appearance of, oh, I'm totally not Secret Service, I'm totally not security, I'm just somebody in a dark suit with sunglasses and an earpiece in, right? No, you're not trying to do that. You're not trying to blend in. Everybody knows who you are. But but the gun remains holstered because it's like an on and off switch. But once that switch gets flipped on, as long as the principal is on site, your gun is out unless you're using your hands for something. So she shouldn't even, that tells me that she's never done enough. She has not done enough stress inoculation training. You can see handshaking. She's got a flop sweat going. She looks a little bit disoriented. She's a little bit hyper alert, but she's hyper alert without proper direction, which is part
Mhm.
of the problem. And, the female officer fumbling with her sunglasses is kind of in the same boat. And the thing is if it's the whole purpose of wearing sunglasses when you're on a protection detail is so nobody knows exactly where you're looking. Once somebody has already shot at the principal, fuck your sunglasses, right? There's no heads up display in there. You don't need them, right? That should be the last thing that you're worrying about, you know. Again, but they haven't been through enough stress inoculation training, so they're gravitating towards what they know, which is they all wanted to turn the switch off and go right back to I'm standing a post. Now I'm outside the door. The principal's in the vehicle, but isn't pulled away yet. I'm standing a post. No, you're not standing a post. You're in a warm zone. It's a totally different scenario. So it's that, again, that tells me that at least those individuals are not doing enough realistic stress inoculation training, maybe not enough scenario based training, and that they could benefit from that. Sorry,
Yeah,
I know
but
that was a really long answer.
no, no, I love it. Your input is important. That's why I wanted to have you on and talk about this a little bit. I couldn't agree more, first of all. Last thing on this, man, where do we go from here? I think people are just fucking
Mhm.
swimming. They don't know left from right, up from down. Could this happen again?
Absolutely. And I'm not, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it happens again. And the thing, there's the potential for, this event, somewhere, some guy that was, basically the 180-degree opposite number of this shooter, somewhere in a basement somewhere, he watched all this unfold in real time, or she watched all this unfold in real time. And in their mind, this is the clarion call. This is the bridegroom cometh. They're like, oh, we're at war now, right? So the potential that somebody could try to now go after a sitting president in a similar fashion is very much a real possibility. The fact that another person who hates Donald Trump sees that, oh, this is not fuck. If that guy was a 20-year-old who knew nothing, hey, at least, I was a cook in the National Guard for 4 years. I could probably pull this off. You know, somebody is thinking that, so the potential for this happening again towards the president, the vice president, towards Donald Trump and JD Vance, this is a very real possibility. Because when we see something like this, it emboldens people. It emboldens people that are on the same side as that shooter, and it angers and enrages people that were on the opposite side of that shooter. And again, it all goes back to something that I've been saying for a while, which is the political rhetoric is completely out of hand, because you can't say, and I wish I could remember who said it, but somebody actually said uh, within the last month, and I want to say it was one of the bloated harpies on The View, but I'm not 100% sure, that they said, hey, everybody always asks, what would you do if you could go back in time and stop Hitler in 1939? Well, guess what? It's 1939. This is, you can't act like it's that level of stakes and then be surprised when a crazy person takes you at your word. Because honestly, so, if there really was somebody out there who legitimately really was the reincarnation of Hitler, and they really were going to destroy our country and destroy democracy, people who really do have the knowledge, the skill, and the balls would be lined up to take that person out, right? We know that it's just rhetoric, but not everybody's smart enough to figure out that it's just rhetoric. When you tell somebody with an 85 IQ that this guy really is, an existential threat to democracy, to them that means, well, game on. It's if I really if I've been called a Nazi for being a conservative, and I've said to people, then why aren't you trying to kill me? Because if I ever met a legit Nazi, that would be my reaction. Is this person needs to be taken out of the gene pool. So if you really feel that way, if it's not just a hollow word, then why are you just posting about it on the internet and not doing something about it? And that's exactly what this guy probably thought, is if this guy really is a Nazi, I'm I'm doing humanity a huge service by taking this guy out. So the rhetoric has to be dialed down. We need to go back to it's one thing to say I disagree with his policies. If
And
President
that's
Biden,
fine. And
that's
that's
fine.
fucking fine.
Yeah. If you say, look, I don't, I don't want, hey, I feel bad for people trying to escape Venezuela. And I think, yes, I know we're going to have to raise taxes and we're going to have to foot the bill for this, but I'm okay with that. That's one thing to say, well, he's a fascist because he wants to secure the border. That's completely a different thing. You don't hear anybody on our side saying, hey, they're gonna start up a gulag. They're gonna put people in a fucking gulag. You know, uh, I mean, you did, and I'll say this: you did hear shit like that during the Clinton administration. I remember, everybody thought, FEMA was going to be rounding people up. I don't know how, that rumor got started. And there were some concerning shit during that time period. I'm not going to lie to you. Some of the stuff that was going on in the 90s at places like the Joint Readiness Training Center, when you had infantry units training to go house to house and confiscate weapons, and they said it was for some place like Kosovo, right? But it kind of made you do a double take, right, in context. But nobody looked at that in the ranks of the military. There wasn't like this, hey, the Clintons are getting ready to go house to house and confiscate weapons. Maybe we need to, drive the tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue. There was none of that. But the rhetoric has ramped up so much in 2024. When you say things like this is a war, this is a war for the soul of America, democracy is on the line, these are really inflammatory statements, and as we've seen, they are not without consequences. And I would say this to those who said, well, Trump started the rhetoric. Hey, Trump said stuff like, hey, if you kick somebody's ass at one of my rallies, I'll pay your legal bills, right? He never said, hey, I'll buy you a fucking sniper rifle, shit like that. So to the people that blame Donald Trump for this and say he brought it upon himself, I say that is and you probably saw my post on this, that's literally the equivalent of asking a rape victim what they were wearing.
Mm-hmm. See
You
that.
can't, it's, none of his followers went out and executed that level of violence, but, the people that hated him did. And as predicted, people cheered that individual on. And a lot of people have been exposed, sorry he missed, just right before, when I was kind of puttering around on the internet right before we went live, and some yoga teacher, and she was actually celebrating the death of that fire chief. Say, oh, at least we got one of his followers. I mean, the level of vitriol to say, hey, a guy who served his community for over 20 years, a guy who was a leader in his church and his community, and who died protecting his family from incoming fire, and you're going to celebrate his death because he didn't agree with you politically, because he wanted lower taxes and secure borders, and wanted a say in his kids' education, because he thought that it was right that if his kid was going to school and saying they wanted to change their gender, that was a conversation he was entitled to be a part of. And somehow this person's a monster. Come on.
Based on what he believes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you going into this. This is something I wanted to touch on, at least with somebody that's educated in the field. How many deployments did you do?
I did GWAT, I did 5. Yeah, I did one Iraq, one Iraq, 2 Afghanistan, and a couple into Libya. So
I think there's this big fascination, and rightfully so, for civilians with like Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and rightfully so. What are your biggest takeaways and kind of the lessons learned from your deployments? I know that's a very broad question, but
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen some really terrible things. You've dealt with some fucking awful people,
Hmm.
but you've probably also worked with a hell of a lot of great people, made a lot of great relationships and friends, seen
Yeah.
terrible things, done terrible things, but you've
Yeah.
done a lot of good too. Biggest takeaways?
Biggest takeaways is every organization is only as strong as its weakest link, right?
Yes.
And this kind of reflects on what we're talking about with the Secret Service here. And I I had kind of an interesting deployment. I had an interesting GWAT period because I was an operator for 17 years, and then I went to med school. I actually went to med school after 9/11. I almost didn't go to med school because of 9/11, and my sergeant major actually talked me into going. He said, hey, you can't turn down this opportunity. We need you to go. The war's not going anywhere. We need you to come back as a physician who understands what we do and what we need. So I did. And I went back, and I got assigned to the Joint Medical Augmentation Unit at JSOC. So all of my GWAT deployments were not as an operator; they were all as a physician. And every time I showed up to work in direct support of somebody, I kind of had to prove that I was worthy of being on the X with them. They weren't, just because I was in a tier unit, and just because I had some stuff on my shoulder before I went to medical school didn't automatically mean that I could kid up and get on the bird with them and go out and do terrible things in the middle of the night with cool dudes. Um, so I had to prove that, if anything, I wasn't going to be that weakest link. And I enjoyed the level of security that I knew that the guys around me were at the absolute top of their game, that I had nothing to worry about, and the level of security they got from knowing that if just moving from point A to point B, I was competent enough to do the right thing. That when the bullets started flying, I was not going to crack under the pressure, and that if any of them, God forbid, did get injured, that I was highly trained and competent in a pre-hospital and tactical environment, that I could take care of them. So there was that mutual respect, which I think is really important. And there was nobody when we loaded up on a helicopter or loaded up in an armored vehicle to roll out. There was none of this. Well, yeah, we kind of got told we got to take so and so along. They're not really up to it, but it's we don't have a choice in the matter. Their uncle is so and so, so they got to go along with us. We didn't have any of that bullshit. We didn't have anybody micromanaging us. Because one of the things and this was another thing I wanted to touch on when we were talking about rules of engagement is high level organizations, and this is true for the military tier 1 units, and this is also, in my experience, has been true for units like Secret Service, is the recognition that in the heat of the moment, you are not, you can have the best commander in the world, but they're not going to be the one that makes that decision. So you have to have, so communication is never the answer. Like, the ability for, an operator on an objective to talk to the, dev group commander or the Delta Force commander directly to them and say, this is what I've got. What do you want me to do? That's not what's important. What's important is that you have highly trained, highly proficient, highly competent individuals, and you train to the point that you have policies and procedures in place that they know what to do. They know what the avenue is. They know what their left and right limits are. And that's extremely important. And that's when, the first time I was somewhere where the bullets started flying and we all had to react, nobody waited for guidance. It's, we moved almost at like one organism. And a word, I don't, at least a minute, maybe even a minute and a half went by before I heard a word spoken over my headset. It was bullets are flying. We all reacted. We all did what we were supposed to do. And, the firefight was engaged. And then we started hearing, hey, we've got this at this location, this at this location. Who's got this? Who's got that? And that's really important. If you have people that need to be micromanaged to the point that, you're ever going to be in a situation, you're like, oh my God, I can't. If you have a plan that in that plan, the failure of communication will ruin the plan, you have a shit plan. You either have a shit plan or you have shit people or both, because you should be able to completely nullify all forms of radio communication and still have the confidence to know that you can complete your mission. So, and it's all about meritocracy. It's all about competence, and it's all about trusting the people to your left and right. So I think that's probably the most important thing I learned, not only on deployment, but in my 32 years in uniform.
That kind of reminds me, I have a good friend. I hate to give him a shout out because he gets kind of brought up on the show a lot, just because I talk to a lot of vets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But former SEAL, and I'm like, dude, what is it? What's it like getting on that bird with your boys, and you're about to go on an op? Like, are you guys talking? Like, what's the vibe on that fucking plane? He's like, just chill. I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? He's like, dude, half of us are sleeping. We
Yeah.
don't we don't talk. We're calm. We're getting a nap. I was like, you nervous? He's like, no, not really. It's like, why? He's like, we do this shit every fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
We train like this. I know what everybody is gonna do under fire. We train like that. Like, I know what my guy to the left is gonna do. I know what the guy to the right is gonna do. And I think that there's something to be said with that just in everyday life too.
Mm-hmm.
Practice how you play and everything. And you're not gonna have all that anxiety. You're not gonna have all that fear. I just found it very interesting. I was like, fuck, man, I'd be pretty amped up. He's like, What's that gonna do? It's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Just found it interesting. Was it like
You're
that for
probably,
you guys too?
yeah, I would say, the first time there's a lot more amp probably that first time. And once you figure out, during and after the fact, hey, that was literally just like my training.
Hmm.
Like it was no difference. Like I didn't have anything to worry about. You never want to go full, and Rob McNeil talks about this in his book. You never want to get to the point that you just blow it off completely, right? Because there's, even in training, even when the targets aren't shooting back, there's always a real danger there. And the moment you forget that, or just, you don't care about that, is the moment you need to hang up your spurs. But you definitely, it's, as time goes by, you dial it down and you figure out, hey, this is just, I'm going to do my job because everybody's depending on me. And I know I can do my job because I've done it before and I've done it in training. And this is just like training. And we have everything that we need to execute this mission. And we're going to go in there. We're going to knock it out. And I trust that guy and that guy and that guy. And I've been in firefights with all these guys before. None of them are an unknown. So yeah, it's pretty chill. Guys are sleeping, guys are giving each other shit. That's one of the most realistic things. It's so I'm gonna shout out to Chris Pratt. So I'm gonna give him there's been a couple of projects he's been involved in that have really hit me on a very personal level. And one was when he was in the film Zero Dark 30. When he's on the bird and he's got his earbuds in, and somebody goes, "What do you listen to?" And he goes, "Tony Robbins." I got plans for when I. That was one of the most realistic fucking things I've ever fucking seen. It's just, you'll see guys, reading self-improvement books, or, occasionally, reading a Bible, or they got a paperback, stuffed into their pocket. It's, people are, they're engaging other parts of their brain right up until game time. And then it's like, oh, all right, it's go time. Let's do this. That was one. And then the other, and I actually posted about this back when he did the terminal list. There was the very first episode of the terminal list actually elicited a genuine PTSD moment from me. And I ended up posting about it, and Chris Pratt we're not friends, but he ended up following me on Instagram. Uh, so I just think it's pretty funny that, two of the times that I've seen portrayed on the screen, shit that I really identified with from my own experience, they both involved him. But it's, yeah, when you learn early on that if I burn up a lot of adrenaline, rocking back and forth and worrying on the 40-minute flight to the objective, I'm just going to burn myself out. All that means is, I'm probably going to need to take a shit as soon as we land. And that's not a place you want to be. So, you know, catching up on your rack time, reading something, giving each other shit, listening to music, it's, whatever you do to kind of pass the time. And then typically about 10 minutes out, it's all focus. And that's when you really start to roll things over in your mind, step by step, again, which you've already done hundreds of times. There was only one time kind of towards the latter part of my deployment career that that I was I would say a decent level of stress up to and including the moment on target. And it was a pretty high level mission that I was involved in, and I knew that there were a lot of eyes on it, and also the medical plan was such that I'm used to 80% of it being on my plate, but in this instance 99% of it was going to be on my plate, because we were going to be in a situation where it was going to be a little bit less robust, should I say, than what you're used to in a mature theater. And there was some time in my rack the night before that I had a little bit more nervousness than I'd had in a while, and I ran through a lot more stuff, and I was a little bit more meticulous about the way that I checked my gear, going up to that mission, and a little bit more apprehensive and a little bit more thoughtful and engaged because I'd had that level of relaxation to kind of set in over time, and then kind of everything that was on the line on this particular night just kind of elevated me back to kind of where I was early on in, say, the first couple of missions that I'd been on.
If you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to, but I'd like to bring it up.
Mhm.
You mentioned a piece in the terminal list that brought back something that, was hard to deal with. You want to dive into that or no? What was it?
Yeah, we can. It wasn't. It was not because of any specific, like, oh my God, I was in the exact same situation. I'm not trying to say that. Um, in the very first, and this is a testament, to the fact that the author of the terminal list is, he's lived the life, right?
Yes.
Um, it, the very first part of episode 1 of the terminal list, when they're on the mission and they're underground in that kind of that sewer area, everything that was going on in that, I was watching it and I was getting angry, and I couldn't really put my finger on why I was angry. And I'm like, every time somebody would say something in the scene, and I was like, like is this just horribly written dialogue? Like, why am I getting pissed? I couldn't even put a finger on why I was angry. I just knew something about that entire scene was was pissing me off. Just I was mad viscerally. My stomach was in knots, and I could not put my finger on why. And it wasn't until it's spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen it. Things end up going horribly awry, and that all ends up being basically a trap, designed to kill the entire team. It wasn't until after that, and I got really absorbed in kind of the latter 2/3 of that episode, and I was like, wow, this is like really, really well written. And I didn't realize it until I said to my wife, I said, I almost got up and walked out of the room during that first scene. Like I couldn't handle being in the same room and watching it. And she said, yeah, I was watching your body language. She said, you were clenching your jaw, you were clenching your fists and then unclenching them. And she said, I think that was your PTSD. And then it dawned on me that, yeah, it was that from someone that had been in situations where shit had gone sideways, everything about that situation, I just knew, like, shit's about to go sideways. Why are you just standing there talking? Why aren't you getting the fuck out of there? This is bad. Why can't you see this is bad? And it was speaking to me on like such a subliminal level that I didn't even realize it.
Appreciate you sharing that. I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about Mind of the Warrior and then dive into your book a little bit. Then I'll let you scram, brother.
Okay. Yeah. So Mind of the Warrior is a podcast that I started years ago. I was actually still on active duty. I had intended at the time, the main focus, I was really, I'm still a huge MMA fan, but I was really like, I was living MMA at the time. And I was working heavily as a fight doctor. I was working 2 to 3 events per month. And I basically wanted to have a show where I could talk to people in MMA. And, that's why if you go back and you look at my early episodes, Robin Black, Chael Sonnen, Tim Kennedy, Colton Smith, almost exclusively all of my guests in the early days were MMA fighters or people that were somehow involved in mixed martial arts. Um, I started adding more stuff to that over time, talking from everything, from my military experience to fitness, men's health. I've done movie reviews and everything else, and basically it's I try to kind of hop around so much that I don't really fit into any mold. It's just if it's something that I feel like talking about. Not too long ago I did a pretty long episode on basically my opinion of Star Wars over the years from 1977 till present day, just because it's something I felt like talking about. Um, it's I've been trying to grow my YouTube presence. I recently, just last month, I think, went over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I'm trying to continue to grow that and continue to put out good content. It's Unfortunately, it's a hit and miss because since I can't afford to do it full time, sometimes I'll have 2 episodes a week for 2 months straight, and then I might go 3 weeks without putting out an episode at all, which is kind of where I am now. But so that's Mind of the Warrior. My book, which you see over here behind me, I wrote a few years back. It's called Honed: Finding Your Edge as a Man Over 40. And it's a compilation of everything. As I mentioned, I was an operator for 17 years before I went to med school. So I went to med school at 36. I graduated med school and I was an intern at age 40. By the time I got back to the soft community, I was 43 years old. I had just come out of 7 years where I had to carve out every physical training second I could get. Med school and residency are not geared towards keeping you in optimal physical shape by any means. Um, and it was a wake up call for me physically. It was harder to get back in shape, harder to maintain being in shape. And I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And I used my 17 years as an operator, 17 years performing at a high physical level, and I combined that with the medical and scientific knowledge I'd gained in medical school, in undergraduate medical school and residency. And I started to apply that to, supplements, to diet, nutrition, to exercise regimens, and everything else that I had to do. And I kind of cultivated that knowledge and continued to cultivate that knowledge over the years as I got older and I stayed active and doing everything I was doing. And I found through my podcast that I started getting a lot of emails and a lot of DMs asking me for that type of advice. And finally, I decided, hey, I'm just going to put it all in a book. And when somebody asks me, I can just say, hey, I've already put it all together for you. You can just read the book. So I go through everything from uh, what your macros should be, how much water you should drink, how to get a good night's sleep, because that's always been an issue for me. Martial arts and fitness programs and staying away from fad diets and exclusionary diets. And I cover all that stuff in the book. Really well received. I was top of the Amazon charts when it first came out. At this point, I think I've sold 9,000 copies worldwide. And I still get, there's a lot of great 5-star reviews on Amazon. And I get emails all the time from people that say it's helped them. And I integrate everything I talk about the book in my medical practice. I run a TRT practice right here out of my home. And I integrate all that knowledge in it. And really, because of the audience that I got with Honed and with Mind of the Warrior, I ended up starting my own supplement company, Graybeard Performance. And this is our Way of the Warrior whey protein. And there's some bottles on the shelf here behind me. Those are some of the supplements, and all of the supplements that I sell at graybeardperformance.com all have clinical evidence to back them up. I just don't throw something in a capsule at a ridiculous markup and charge you a lot of money so that you can have brightly colored urine. There are clinical trials to show that every single ingredient I put in my supplements does exactly what it says it does. And I take them all every day myself, and I stand behind them 100%.
Amazing, dude. I'm not 40, but I'm gonna get a copy of your book and read that thing.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. I've had 26-year-old females read it and tell me that they've integrated everything that I talk about in the book, and it's really helpful. I wish a lot of the knowledge that I have now, I wish I had had in my 20s. I got a hip replacement 2 years ago. I probably would not have needed that had I heeded the advice that I have now put in those pages.
Do you know Luke Cadillo?
No, that sounds very familiar, but I don't know him offhand.
Former MMA guy, now he coaches
Mhm.
Justin Gaethje.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he'd be a good one for your podcast if you want to talk some MMA. I just had him on last week. He's awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on. Love to have him
Cool.
on. I
I'll
love
set you.
talking to coaches. I love talking to coaches. I like talking to fighters too, but I like talking to people I love talking to coaches and guys like Robin Black who just, kind of break things down. I love kind of exploring MMA on the more cerebral aspect of it. So trainers are always a hit with me.
Yeah, I'm gonna set you guys up.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Um, Last thing, man, a lot of vets listen to this show. Many struggling with the transition out of the military. Any advice for
Mhm.
those guys and gals?
Yeah, don't forget. So just remember that every time you walk into the workplace, you have something that 97% of people do not have, right? You have experience that, that cannot be bought, cannot be gleaned through an online course or through your local college and university. Don't ever forget that. But at the same time, don't ever think that they owe you something for that. Okay. Do I think they do? Yes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they think they do. So, you're not entitled. Don't feel that you're entitled. You are going to have to prove yourself again. But just remember, this is just like day one of basic training. This is just like day one when you got to your unit. Um, you're going to prove yourself, and you can do that, and you are not alone. And don't hesitate to reach out for help. The biggest mistake, I like talking to people who are getting ready to separate and haven't separated yet. The I had a very long career, and I got out more than once. I separated from the military the first time in 1988, and I went into the National Guard. The tools that you have today when you separate from the military are leagues, echelons above what we had in the 1980s. Take advantage of them. You know, don't don't just go, you're going to get that checklist when you out process. Don't just go place to place to place and get somebody to give you the stamp and turn around and walk out the door. Listen to their spiel. Watch if they've got a video for you to watch or some online training you have to do. Take advantage of that. Everything from how to write a resume, how to market the skills that you've gained in the military. Take advantage of all of that. Have everything, every physical ailment you ever had in the military. And this was advice that somebody else gave me. They said at a year and a half to 2 years out, you need to be documenting all those medical problems you've been hiding so you could keep deploying and keep jumping out of airplanes. You need to be upfront with those. You need to get all those documented. And I did. And, when I hear about guys are saying, I just couldn't wait to get out. I had a bad experience. I hated my chain of command. I just wanted to get out the door. Yeah, I went to all those briefings. I just sat in the back and played on my phone, and they stamped and I walked out. I feel my heart bleeds for those guys. And I've talked to several guys in that situation. And some of them have tried to like bullshit me, like, no, I never got a briefing on that. I'm like, nope, yeah, you did. You got out a year after I did. I'm 100% sure you got a briefing on that. You just didn't pay attention. And that's why you are now saying nobody told you how to file for your VA claims, because you blew it off because you wanted to go home and jump on your Xbox rather than sit through that briefing. So if you're getting ready to get out, take advantage of everything they offer you, whether you think you need it or not. Take advantage of it. And if you're already out, don't let go of the things that you learned on active duty, like being in the right place at the right time in the right uniform, freshly shaven, with you don't look like your clothes just got pulled out of a dumpster. Be a professional and prove yourself every day, and don't lose sight of that. Backwards plan your day every day, and make a schedule, make a training schedule, stick to it. These are valuable skills. Everything you needed to learn to succeed in life, you learned in your first 2 years in the Army. It's all there for you. You just have to go back and embrace it.
Fucking awesome, Mike. I really appreciate it, brother. Where can people find you? I know we talked about YouTube, the podcast, Instagram, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so the Mind of the Warrior podcast is on all platforms, and the Mind of the Warrior YouTube channel. If you search it by Mind of the Warrior, or you search it by at Dr. Mike Simpson, DrMikeSimpson, which is also my Instagram and Twitter handle, that's how you can find it. So if you just do a search for me, drmikesimpson.com is still up and running, but I don't use it for much anymore. Graybeardperformance.com. You can contact me through that website. You can also subscribe a couple times a month. I'll send out newsletters and links to the videos that I've posted on YouTube. So that's a good place to get in touch. And I'm probably over interactive on social media, which a lot, because I even interact with the trolls, which a lot of people give me shit for. So, I mean, if you comment on one of my posts, I try to be engaging. Yeah, I'm an asshole sometimes. I will apologize
Don't
for
ever
that
stop doing
in
that.
advance.
Don't ever stop doing that. I've been following you a day and I fucking love it, man.
You know, but I get all the time. I'm like, you didn't know, I've been following you for 2 years. You didn't have to be a dick. I'm like, have you been following me 2 years? How did you not know I'm a dick? Like, I didn't just start being a dick yesterday. Come on. Don't take it personally. Sometimes I'm having a bad day. Sometimes I'm under caffeinated. Sometimes I misconstrue what you were trying to say. So, you know, don't be so sensitive. You know, if I need to be brought in line, bring me in line. And if I mute you because you brought me in line, I'm sorry. You know, and maybe I just need some time to think about it and cool off, and I'll unmute you later. I don't know.
Mike, that's a podcast, man. It was an honor. I appreciate you.
Thanks, brothers. I appreciate you having me on.
Cool. We'll cut it there. I'm gonna press stop on this bitch. Sometimes it kicks us out of the lobby. If it does that, I'll just like call you really quick on IG or something. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sounds
Cool.
good.
Let's see what we got.